Good afternoon. It should officially be afternoon for everyone. My name is Dr. Antoinette Bix, and my co-chair is going to be Dr. Elizabeth Cruson. We are both full-time faculty members in the Department of Behavioral Sciences, and we'd like to officially welcome you all to our conference. And for today's presentation is Simple and Effective Digital Communications. With us, we have Alexa Doon. She's Articulation and Prior Learning Assessments. We have Jennifer Graves in the communications. She's a communications manager. Autumn Morgan, Student Records Manager, and Aaron Wilton is Associate Registrar and Director of Student Records. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome them and have them go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful for the opportunity to present today, and we will be going over some simple and effective digital communication tips and tricks. Just very quickly, the pillars of the UAGC culture of care are communicate, advocate, respect, empower, and student-centered. And so while this is heavily going to be about communication, I personally believe that communicate is key to the other four as well. So as mentioned, my name is Alexa. I'm in the Articulation and Prior Learning Assessment Department, and over the past several years, I've taken on more and more responsibility on both updating current and existing outreach to students, as well as creating new things as well. This includes things from emails to flyers to our uagc.edu website, various pages on there.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Graves. Usually go by Jen, and I am a communications manager here at UAGC, and I have been working in communications professionally for about 18 years. More than half of that has been with higher education institutions, and the last two have been with UAGC. And I have a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Colorado and a master's in organizational leadership. And communications is obviously part of my daily job, my daily work, and something I care very much about. And so anything I can do to help create shared meaning is really my professional goal in life. And so I definitely wanted to jump on this panel of extremely well-versed individuals so that I could help share any knowledge.
Hi, I'm Autumn Morgan. I'm the Student Records Manager. I do a lot of work on updating emails to students. SOP is our standard operating procedures. And also a big part of my job is communicating to internal and students on just our policies and procedures and making sure that I'm listening with an empathetic ear.
Hi, I'm Erin Wilton. I'm the Associate Registrar, Director of Student Records. I've been with the organization for about 12 years now, and throughout my various roles, I have communicated closely with students directly, with my peers, with leaders, internally and externally. And so I've had a really good opportunity to have a variety of audiences and really take pride in ensuring my message is communicated effectively, but also that that message is received well and in a way that my audience can understand it depending upon that audience.
So we do have an agenda today. It's pretty much what we outlined in the session description. We want to talk about the importance of clear communication. We want to capture the attention, talk about tips and tricks. We want to cut through the clutter and navigate that legal verbiage wherever we need to. And then there is going to be a practical application to discuss, refine, and repeat. So before we get into the real content, we do want to ask right away that you submit content in the chat early and often. Is there a paragraph you would like to refine? Is there a web page that you'd like us to take a look at? What is a good example of something that you've had? What is a bad example? What is something you're struggling with? This is an interactive where we can help each other. So please do, throughout the thing we'll try and get to them at the end. And from there, we'll just move on to this slide. So communication and a culture of care, why is this important? So I sort of referenced this at the beginning, that without communication, we don't have any of the other things. We aren't able to advocate for ourselves and others without being able to communicate what our needs are, what the problem is, what solutions might be. Respecting someone is making sure you are listening to them, which is a part of communication, is the receiving piece of it. And so communication, when it is clear and concise, it helps make sure that what you are sending is being received and understood in the manner that it is meant. By doing this, we make sure that everyone understands the information. We develop that shared understanding of a situation. We do promote trust if we are consistently saying the same things and we're talking the same sort of shared language. And we get participation. The more we listen to others, the more we are able to then hear their voice, and the more they know we're hearing their voice, and the more they're likely to speak up as well. Communication does have layers to it. So when we talk about a shared language, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of us speak English as a first language. Several of us do in the meeting today, but we know that especially as our student population, we know that we have students from across the world, from various backgrounds. We know that English can be a second language to many of them. And so culturally sensitive communications respects both where people have come from, where words might be a little bit different, and it also respects that using, one of the tips later on is simpler language, is to make sure that the message isn't going to be lost in that translation between the cultures. So listening to the feedback you get when you say something is also very important here, and listening to how someone is understanding what you're saying and being able to adjust using words precisely and sort of on your feet there. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share some of the things that I look at when I draft a communications based on experience and education, and a few emails. I've written a couple. So one of the first things that I wanted to mention was the inverted pyramid, because this is so different from academic writing. So when you're writing for simple, effective digital communications, in academic writing, you're leading up to a conclusion, where really when you're writing a digital communication such as an email, you want to put the most important information, what they need to know first. And why do you need to do that? It's the best opportunity for your message to be understood. We all know that we have shorter attention spans, so people are skimming, they're reading the first couple of sentences to get an idea of what they want out of the information, if they're going to continue reading it. So the need to know needs to come first. And then what you can do is add in the nice to know, the supporting details and the background into that. So the inverted pyramid is actually taken from journalism. If you think about it, they only had so many column inches to put in, and they needed to be able to cut off the end of the article at any given time. So if you just remember that you put the most important information first, and then the most important supporting details and background down to the point where you're like, you can cut off the last couple of paragraphs and that's okay, then you're writing in the inverted pyramid style. The need to know is really the who, what, where, when, and why. In journalism is considered the lead, but you're trying to give them the hook that gets them into it and give them enough information that they can create a mental model in their head of what information is going to follow. This actually leads to better comprehension because they have an idea already of what your email is about, and everything that you're providing in the nice to know section is then supporting that mental model that you created at the very beginning. I also wanted to go through a writing checklist, and these are great practices to go through each time or one-on-one, just to figure out different ways that you can communicate more effectively, especially for digital communications, which are shorter and to the point. So one of the basic tenets, and I think we've heard this before, is really one, maybe two messages tops per email. Remember, if you think just to the last one, if you need to put the who, what, where, when, and why at the very beginning, you need to be able to fit that. And if there's multiple messages, you're not going to be able to clearly put that into one or two sentences at the very beginning. Also, if you want to have them walk away from it knowing what your main message was, and if you have 3 different and they take you all in different directions, it's going to be hard for everybody to walk away from that communication with the same understanding that you intended. So really sticking to one, maybe two messages per email, for example, is ideal. The second one, plain language. This overall just makes your content more accessible. So your audience is not all at the same level of cognition, ability, skill, vocabulary. I mean, all of it. You have to comes into it in the sense that in writing to be accessible, plain language is going to be the most effective. That's not dumbing it down. It's just being as direct and as focused on shared meaning as you can be by using plain language. And I always love to have this conversation in my previous jobs. It is that just because I can read at a higher level doesn't mean I always want to. And so I imagine driving down the road and thinking, what if road signs were written in Shakespearean literature tone? No thanks. I need to get to the point. I need to understand what's going on. Just because people can read at a higher level. We're a higher education institution. We're very proud of our students and faculty. That does not mean that we need to speak at a higher level. Making plain language an important thing means that I'm respecting you and saying, let's get to the point and keep going. And it's more inclusive, right? You're thinking of your English as a second language reader, or even the people that are associated with that person. It might not be the student. It might be the family of the student. It might be somebody else that's helping them with whatever subject you're sending them to. So the other one is to spell out the acronym. So what is obvious to you isn't always obvious to somebody else. A lot of times I'm asking people, remember, you're not the target audience. You work in a higher education institution. This is something like a policy or procedure that you work with every single day. This student may come across this once or twice a year, maybe once a year, maybe once in their education. So sometimes spelling out what seems obvious, including the acronyms, is incredibly important. It's also for accessibility in plain language. I'm thinking of even just like TA could be tuition assistant, or it could be teaching assistant. If you just spell it out, they don't have to guess. Even if they can come to that conclusion based on the context of the message in 2 seconds, why make them take the 2 seconds to figure that out? The next one is bulleted lists. I think just by the writing checklist, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. If we just wrote out everything that I'm saying, by God, I think you guys would have already canceled out of this, and I wouldn't have blamed you. So it attracts attention. It also supports that scanning. So if I'm not going to read everything, every word, a bulleted list is very helpful in supporting me in scanning that. It's having shortened text, and it's also revealing the relationship of the items in the list. Just by this slide alone, you can see what I would consider as basic writing checklist items versus advanced checklist items. That's based on the list. So another one is consistency. So consistency helps the reader understand the message without distractions. So have any of you guys received an email where you've seen extra or odd spacing, or like odd alignment, or something just seems off? The fact that you've noticed it is actually a distraction and deterrent away from the message. So being consistent in how you format your emails, how you write your sentences, the tone, that stuff actually very much matters. Even down to, and I'm sure some people at UAGC have felt this, I'm very particular on whether or not each bulleted item ends at a period or not. Either they all do or they all don't. But the consistency helps the reader say, this is expected, I can keep moving forward. Whereas if it's different each time, it can become a distraction taken away from the message. So consistency helps set expectations. And it also creates a structure that can be, I want to say followed, but more so ignored. It's a back end thing that they don't have to then pay attention to, and they can focus on the words. Another one is active voice. You want to attend the summit. You don't want the summit to be attended by me. It's just a natural way of speaking. And so it's shorter, clearer, and easier to understand if you're talking about the subject of the sentence doing the action as opposed to that action being done to the subject of it. So it's easier for readers to comprehend quickly and accurately when we speak in active voice. And we'll show you a tool later to help you identify when you are speaking in passive voice. So the second list I have is more advanced. It might take a little bit more time and a little bit more effort in order to implement these, which is why I put them under the more advanced. One of them is positive perspective. So the language you use affects how the message is perceived. I think you're hearing a lot of that with the Culture at Care Summit. It's more natural to be positive. We naturally speak positive, so again, mirroring that is great in your communication. But could you imagine saying to a friend, if you fail to arrive by 5, no. But we can see that in communication sometimes, and you're like, we can just turn that around and say, you need to arrive by 5, or this. Storytelling. Storytelling is another great way. It helps us understand one another. It also helps us create a connection to an emotion. And it exemplifies your message. I can tell you what's important, but if I can show you what's important, you're more likely to create a connection to that story than me just telling you it's important. So storytelling can go a long way in creating a connection. So can tailoring communications to your audience. You are much less likely to truly connect with people via mass messaging, because we can all tell, like, I know when I received a mass email, right? I feel like everybody can say yes. I know that was meant for hundreds of people and not just me. But when it's listed to me, when it's tailored to me, that says something to me of they took the time and effort to make sure that it was speaking directly to me, to my experience, and what I need to do, or my call to action. And it also can be somewhat annoying when you get something that they're like, oh, you need to update X and X software, and you're like, I don't even have that software. I don't need to do that. Why did you email me? So tailoring to your audience is helpful when you can do it. The thing about it is that you need to have a good understanding of your audience. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not as obvious. So that kind of goes into my next bullet point, which is strategy. Putting together a communication strategy is a way to put all of these practices to use and then taking it to another level. You're looking at a longer term relationship with your communication. So with it, you're looking at the time that you're sending something, the different channels. You can talk about a campaign in that how you can plant the idea as a seed and then watch it grow through follow-up communications or through communicating through various channels. That strategy really takes all of these and grows it into something much bigger. Now I know that I just threw a lot of information at you, so if nothing else, keep it short and simple. If you can be succinct but get your message across, that is the most effective way to start a digital communication strategy. Do you want to jump to the next slide? So I also want to give you a tool to help. So you guys, if you have Microsoft Word, which I imagine if not all of you do, there is a great tool within it. It's called the editor. So from your Word document, you just go to the home slide, or I believe they call it a ribbon, and then on the far right is editor. And when you open it, you are going to see these items: the editor score, spelling, grammar, clarity, conciseness, formality, all of those elements. And it's going to actually pinpoint in your document where it thinks that you might be able to either do better or something that needs to your attention. Of course, you're going for an editor score of 100 gold star, but there is also, it's just a wonderful tool to bring your attention to areas where you could potentially improve. If you want to take it even a step further, there is document stats. At the bottom of the editor screen, if you choose document stats, you'll get the sentences per paragraph, the words per sentence, characters per word. Those are additional levels that you can go to take to evaluate your communication. And we've put on the screen the document stat goals of what you should be going for. So sentence per paragraph, 3 to 5 words per sentence, 10 to 20, characters per word, 5 to 6. Those are basically saying keep it short and simple. So if you remember that, keep it short and simple, hopefully these will be one way that you can determine how can I make it even shorter or simpler, or identify how you, which one of these needs a little bit of alteration if that's what you need to do. There's also, like I said, at the very bottom, that passive sentence, we've talked about active voice. They'll help you identify the passive voice. So they'll give you a score based on how much passiveness is in that, and then help you address it. So there's also 2 in there. The flesh reading ease, that rates text on a 100-point scale, and the higher the score, the easier it is to understand. So for most standard files, I want to say, you want to score between 60 and 70, and even higher, the better. There's also the grade level score, which tells you what US grade level the communication is written at. And to be honest, we're shooting for an 8th grade level. We're shooting for comprehension of a general audience. So that's a great tool that I highly recommend you guys check out. And we have another one for you.
Wanted to jump in on this one. Over the past 2 years, I've been using 2 things that have really helped me with my personal communication. One of them is the book Smart Brevity, and I can drop this in the chat. It's by Vandehei, Allen, and Schwartz. They are the founders of Axios and Politico, so my one objection with their book is they do talk about their own political beliefs a little bit, but when you get to the meat of their message on simplification, it's extremely great. And the second one is I've attended a webinar by the founder of Simplify Language, and I believe his name is Lee Chyanis. Please forgive me, I hope I got that one right. The Simplify Language one showed me this editor, the DocStats. That is so fantastic, and it's something that my team and I actually have started using in any of our communications. And really, when we think about this as an institution, when we have a first in the family coming to us, they might need to have someone in their family help them read this. And so we don't need to be writing at a grade 12 or a master's or a doctoral level in the things that we have out there when it's not an academic writing. So this has been one of the things that I have employed, along with the bullet points and putting my 1 to 2 sentences at the top. Looking at the grade level and the reading ease has been a huge help for my team and I.
That's awesome. So another one, and I just have fun with this one, there's a lot of different tests that you can do for usability, readability, accessibility, but this one's pretty fun to do, I think. I'm also a comm nerd, so that's okay. It's the closed test. And so if you want to check the comprehension of something that you've put together, particularly if you can do that with your target audience, what I would love to do at another university I worked at, which had a campus, and so students were readily available, is the closed test. And that's where you would take out every 6th word, and then you would just replace it with a blank. And then you'd hand it to somebody and say, can you guess what words are supposed to go there based on contextual clues in the vocab and the subject of what is left? And if they could get 60% more on average, then you can assume that your text is reasonably comprehensible. Like, okay, it's good enough. It would be really fun, though, to see how different people would put in different words, use different language, or how something could completely throw them if it was a very key word in the sentence that was taken out, and what they would put in that blank instead. So this is both a fun way to see if your content is being comprehended by your target audience, but it's also a good way to, if you just visually did this yourself, to say, does my information still make sense if I'm taking out every 6th word? So if you guys have an idea of a website or something that you'd love to test, I'd love for you to put it in the chat, and we could, if we have time, we'll do a closed test on that.
So up until now, we've spoken a lot about keeping things simple, plain language, and often as an institution of higher education, and particularly in my area, in the registrar's office, we actually have an obligation to communicate legal requirements, regulatory requirements, policies that are a little bit more challenging to fit into that simple, plain language and ensure that the message is still received and you're communicating what you're obligated to. And so this is information that's going to be in our academic catalog, coming from our legal department, Department of Education regulations, or other agencies that do regulate our industry. And so it's really important that we strike a balance between communicating what we need to, but doing so in a way that our students are understanding what we're saying. And in my area, in the registrar's office, some days I feel like all I do is policy. Is it the right policy? Is it written correctly? Are we enforcing it? Are we communicating it? And I live and breathe it. And so when I read a policy, to me, I can understand what I'm reading. But understanding that the audience of the student is not living that world every day. And so we need to simplify that communication in a way that they can understand it, but ensure they're abiding by any policies or understanding the impacts of decisions based on regulations that we have at the institution. So what are some tips on finding that balance are just simplifying the overall communication, pulling out the need to know information, dispelling worry at the beginning. So if I'm sending an email saying, this policy states that X, Y, and Z, that's very harsh up front, and the student's wondering, am I abiding by that policy? Have I done something wrong? And so really dispelling that at the beginning and giving them some context of maybe the why we're about to discuss this. And then even asking our colleagues in the legal department, can you reword this in layman's terms that somebody might understand? Because even if I think I'm doing so, maybe I'm not capturing the spirit of what was intended by that policy by simplifying it. So we will go over an example of how we've done that in a few slides as well.
Okay, so we are going to start putting this into practice. So this is a change that my team and I actually made within maybe the past year. So this was our original email. It opened with hello student name. In your application to the University of Arizona Global Campus, you indicated that you have a certificate, license, or other credential which may support an award of college credit through the prior learning assessment process. It's a very long sentence, but PLA offers the opportunity for you to save time and money by awarding credit towards your degree for what you already know. Does anyone want to take a shot at how we might have changed this? You're welcome to put it in the chat, but I will be putting up what we have now in just a moment. Hopefully people are gonna participate. So this is what we cut this down to. We said, now that your official transcript has been completed, your evaluation has been completed, we would love to connect with you to explore possible transfer credit for your work and life experience. We cut down that extremely long sentence and we put that into work and life experience, which is what it is. And we have had a lot of people sort of seemingly, anecdotally, we see the replies come into us that says, I'm interested. How do I do this? We do have the information in the email, but we have at least got them to reply to us by catching their attention with that very first cut down. Yeah. Okay, I think the next one is Erin.
Yes, so this is an example of an email that we used to send students to remind them to post attendance. And so we are an attendance taking institution. And so in order for a student to remain enrolled, they have to meet regular attendance requirements. And they are regulated by the Department of Education. So this is an example of where that legalese and certain things we need to communicate to that student to ensure they understand the implications of posting attendance versus not. What does attendance mean? And so this original version is actually shorter than our updated version. It says, please ensure you participate in an academic activity within the online classroom, which includes posting in a graded discussion forum, submitting a written assignment or journal entry, or submitting a quiz or exam. This will ensure you will remain in attendance as defined in the academic catalog. And so our updated version is actually a bit longer. And even after going through this, preparing this presentation with my colleagues, I recognize there are still a lot of areas of we can improve this. But what we did is it was important to add a little bit more so that they understood what is attendance and what are the consequences of maybe not posting it appropriately when they think they are. And so the first thing we did is pull up that academic catalog resource for the student. If you need more detail, here's your resource for this. You can go here. And then we did keep the content of what exactly are the assignments, what's the activity in the classroom that's going to drive attendance for you. And then at the end, we included sort of a consequence or an impact of not meeting the requirements of attendance, and that if you are not engaging in this or participating in an assignment, posting information that is relevant to your assignment, we might have to review that attendance and it might be disqualified for attendance purposes. So this is sort of an example of that legal information where we had to get a little bit more in there, but we tried to restructure it to give the student the resource up front and the implications of not following those policies.
This next example was made up about a digital marketing agency, but I wanted to put together an example of something that I see all the time, which is where you're really proud of what you do, so you try to put it all in one sentence. So in this case, our company is the leading digital marketing agency, and we specialize in a wide range of services such as, and then they list it. And then it ends up being 48 words for one sentence. I think we can do a little bit better. So the updated version, we've put it into a bulleted list. We've spelled out the acronyms, and really we've said our company is our leading digital marketing ad agency specializing in a wide range of services. There could be a period there because that is the number one main message. Or for anybody that is scrolling through that is looking for a specific service, here is a list that they can pick out what they're actually interested in instead of looking at that original version. So this is a great example of how a bulleted list really can help those who are scanning the communications. Spelling it out, even if I know SEO, I want to make sure that it's the same SEO that you're talking about. So spelling it out makes it easier, it's less of a hurdle. And then at the bottom, you'll see we combine similar services. So instead of having them separately, we could have web design, we could have web development, we could have web analytics. How about web design and development? Putting it all together. So this was more of a formatting example. And here is another version, again, made up. We would never do this. Dear students, you're welcome to talk with your UAGC advisor. Just call us. Yeah, the first one was very, very brief, and that's, we just did say keep it simple. But here's where the personalization and the storytelling can come into it, right? If you're saying, Dear Jen, UAGC is honored to be part of your educational journey. You're saying, I'm not only reaching out to you because this is my job, I'm reaching out to you because we really honor this relationship that we have together. We've written it in a positive perspective. We've given them multiple ways they can contact us, making it easier for them to access us based on how they need to access us. And we've given a little bit of basic storytelling by saying, like, we're honored to be part of this journey. That creates a visual and potential for emotional connection, whereas still the message is we're happy to talk to you, and it gives a little bit more information, but the personalization and the storytelling shows that we care.
This is an example of an email that we send out to our students that are eligible to participate in an upcoming ceremony and how to order their cap and gown. It's a pretty lengthy email, so we don't have all of the details in here, so that already is an indicator that there's a lot of information that is being communicated to the student about ordering their cap and gown. In this original version, we have that the student has been invited to participate. We also provide the cap and gown. We have bulleted points here, some formatting in the student portal for your petition to graduate. We also provided details on the cost of each cap and gown by the degree level from the third-party vendor, and then some tips and practices on how to best order the cap and gown. For the updated version that we did, we got it quite shortened down. It's still pretty lengthy just because we wanted to include a lot of information, but I definitely think we used the inverted pyramid where we provided the need to know information first and then some nice to know information at the end. So what we did is we verified attendance, confirming attendance for those students that actually RSVP'd, so it was a little bit more clear after they RSVP'd yes that they were attending, that they are attending. Putting the purchase of the cap and gown on its own line, keeping it bolded, and that it is required to participate in the live ceremony. We also had the link to Jostens a little bit sooner and a quicker way to click on it so that they're not having to browse through the email to find that link. And we took out the actual the cost of the cap and gown for each degree level because that could potentially change. And if we're not checking those updates from that third-party vendor, we could potentially be misleading students on the cost of the cap and gown. And then just providing anything. We have still kept the best tips and practices, like I said, at the end, just for the nice to know if students want to read the email in its entirety.
I like that you took out the petition to graduate information because that's a completely separate message that sort of felt like additional, and by taking it out and keeping this just about the graduation, it was really a really nice thing.
Yeah, we kept it in other comms, so that way it's there, but it's not in this one. That doesn't kind of match. Yeah, so correct.
Okay, so this, I'm slightly embarrassed to admit, is the way my brain works. Very stream of consciousness, and at the beginning of my career, we're not going to say how long ago that was at this point, I would write an email like this. This is made up. I made it up the other week. What are some things we think we can do better here? This is where we are going to have you all try and put some stuff in the chat. Maybe some bullets, combining sentences, cut out excess words. So this is what I would do today. I say straight at the top of my email, I will have 2 questions for you. And then I put those 2 questions into the bullet points. That way, when someone in a very busy world is doing what they need to do and they see my initial, they know they need to add 2 answers to me. And then underneath that, I haven't written it out, but I will add additional information. I'll give them a way to look up this file if it's a student file. But essentially a lot of the times, and I've noticed, I've learned this as I've learned more about my own job, I'm able to answer a question without the additional information. So if I can, and someone sends me an email like this, I'm answering the question without having to go into more additional time to find additional things. So I've definitely evolved, and communication is always evolving. So I think that that's one of the key takeaways I hope you all take from this, is that we can always evolve and improve and learn new tips and tricks. Okay, our next one. So this one, Autumn, I think you were going to take this one. We weren't sure if we were going to do this, but.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so this is the our FAFSA website. Sorry. That students go to, that can be referenced to when they're filling out their FAFSA. And we wanted to use this as a good example to see if you guys can find anything that we can improve, like that they could improve on this website for providing information on how to fill out their FAFSA, maybe if they're eligible requirements. It also provides how they can get their ID. Any suggestions?
While people are maybe typing, we are just 1 minute from our end, so we want to say a big thank you for all of you for attending today. We appreciate you. We hope that you have found something you can take back with you, and please feel free to reach out to any of us. Our email, I believe all of them are first.lastname@uagc.edu, and we would be very happy to share more. So one of the things that I noticed on this one, and this is the only thing, there's a lot on the FAFSA website, so we didn't do the whole thing, but for me, they've said you should explore eligibility requirements after they've told you to go and apply for it. And to me, if I've gone and applied for it and then I go look at the eligibility and find out that I'm not eligible, that would make me a little bit not happy. So that was my only thing on this, but the bullet points and the order of it is, we thought it was a good example.
Yeah, it's a really great short and simple website instead of being in depth with FAFSA information where students can click on what they want to click on.
Okay, well, again, thank you all so much. We appreciate your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.